Skvelé, tak pokračujeme posledným vstupom v tejto druhej časti digitálna transformácia v roku 2020 rýchlo a zbesilo. A máme tu vzácneho hostia, opäť anglicky hovoriaceho, takže skúsime v angličtine. It's my great pleasure to invite our Vice President of Microsoft Education to this stage, virtually to Slovakia for the second time. And we are very thrilled to have you today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President Microsoft Education, Anthony Salcito.
Thank you so much. It's really a great pleasure to be part of this EduDay. And certainly I wish I was there physically with all of you, but I thank you for joining and really sharing during this historic time for education. It is my pleasure to just reflect on some of the progress we're making and some of the look ahead as we prepare for life after the pandemic and really embrace what is an opportunity to fundamentally transform education for the better of our staff, our teachers and educators, and certainly our students. I want to start just with a reflection of thanks. I have been humbled by the amazing work our teachers have been doing to support students, to deal with disruption and challenge with great attitude and energy, and to embrace new ways to extend learning beyond the classroom. We've got to retain all of this goodness, both the impact that teachers have had during this time, the work that they're doing to envision new uses of technology. These are things that we need to keep forward as we embrace life when we return to normal. I want to reflect on the journey technology has gone, because although technology has been certainly a core component of the response to the pandemic, it has been in our schools for decades. In many cases, it has been added to classrooms time and time again. New technologies, new initiatives, many new upgrades to older technologies, often sitting in the midst of traditional classroom environments and often without really rethinking how do we use our time together and use the resources differently. This is an area that I think we have to reflect on as we embrace what will be a fundamental shift on how we think about the use of technology in a far more mature and sophisticated way. Things that were opportunities to explore for transformation before the pandemic, using AI and powerful data to drive insight on student and learner progress, to really think about how we maximize the facilities that we have in our environments, to do a better job of taking advantage of big data. These were things that many institutions around the world were looking at, dabbling in before the pandemic. I will absolutely say that it's an imperative for all of us to build solid plans and thinking on how we can accelerate our transformation using these foundations. And while technology will be a big part of our journey forward, I want to reflect on, frankly, the most important element of success that we've had over the last certainly several months, the last year and a half or so, responding to the pandemic, and that's the transformation of people. The reality is technology is important for sure, but the key differentiator of success, the difference between students that are engaged and thriving in a remote learning scenario, is often to do with the ways in which we appropriately appreciate mental well-being and mental health, the energy and environment that classrooms have, whether it's physically or digitally, and the approach educators have to this environment. And as you accelerate the transformation and the journey forward, it's absolutely imperative that we put people in the front of our efforts. Are we doing enough to bring parents along with readiness and inclusion? Are we celebrating and creating the right energy with our educators? Do students feel at their best, motivated to expect more and achieve more, and feeling comfortable with their learning environment? As leaders, we need to harness the power of people. And certainly while technology will be accelerating us and really enabling us to do new things, Technology in the hands of great empowered people is what we need. Now, as we reflect on the journey ahead, I want to really look at the outside in. The world of work is changing. It's requiring new skills and dynamics, and certainly the traditional skills like communication, collaboration, creativity are still going to be incredibly relevant. We see new skills emerging that really reflect on the work students need to do to embrace culture and caring, the ways in which they think about how they curate knowledge and content, certainly bringing computational thinking into the mix. We need students that are also, as they approach this new world of work, that are embracing the dynamics of risk-taking, that are being able to be reflective of what they learn and apply it in specific ways to solve problems, and then comfortably and naturally build relationships to extend their influence and impact. And as we design our systems of learning, we need to make sure that they are increasingly made for everyone, inclusive and accessible for every student. And we address equities and inequities that we have certainly around the world, as well as everything from technology inequities to gender inequities. We've got to face that. We also have to make sure that education experiences are meaningful for individual learners. This foundation is not only going to help us in the world of work, it's how, frankly, companies are thinking about the new employment dynamics that they need to build, both hiring employees with these types of skills, but thinking about nurturing and developing their employees with these types of initiatives. And this is something that I think we've got to reflect on. Now, as we embrace the road ahead and reflect on what's coming, it's important to understand that we're really in three phases. Many of us around the world are still in the response phase, where we are really dealing with what we can do to keep students and staff safe, which is probably the most important thing. We're dealing the best we can with remote and hybrid learning environments, embracing curriculum and tools that we had before COVID in the best way possible. But as we accelerate the engagement across this shift and get back to classrooms, we're going to really move to the next phase, which is where we start to recover and really plan for this transition. How do we plan and maximize a hybrid learning scenario? How do we extend learning connection beyond the school seamlessly? How do we bring new curriculum and learning modalities into the world of our schools, leveraging the new capabilities, but also embracing the purposefulness of why we're together in classrooms? But as we move to the next phase, this is really where the fundamental shifts will take place. The shifts to think about what's possible to empower students to achieve more. How do we get them to get ready to accelerate their ambitions and prepare to make a difference in the world? And it's going to start by rethinking everything from curriculum and assessment, what we are learning, why we're learning it, what we measure and value in our classrooms, and how do we effectively use everything that we have, our time together, different learning styles, data to provide insight to personalized learning. This is going to be part of the shift to reimagine what's possible for education. Now, I want to recognize that while we certainly know that the journey for reimagining and recovering leads us back to classrooms and back to schools, which is something we all can't wait to do globally, we've got to recognize that we don't want to get back to normal. We want to get back to school, but not back to normal, and look forward on what's going to happen and what's going to change. Now, as we think about this, we are getting feedback all around the world from leaders and educators around what they're looking for. What are they looking to deliver, and questions that we can ask on how we prepare for this new role. Understanding what students need when they return to classrooms. And it's critical, a thing that I've had a chance in my global role to see schools that have come back to classrooms. And one of the things, surprisingly, students will often ask is when they've gone through a full day returning to class, they question why they couldn't have just done everything they did that day at home virtually. And it's going to challenge us to think differently about how we use our face-to-face time going forward. If anything that's happened over the last 12 months is that our time together has been far more appreciated, and we're going to need to use it intentionally much more. So purposeful use of digital tools, whether asynchronous and synchronous, the way in which we use collaboration and connection online is going to be important to enhance, but then absolutely being more meaningful and purposeful on how we use face time is going to be important. How do we really accelerate any learning gaps that we've identified over the last 12 months? Because what our research has shown is that not every learner is thriving in this new digital and hybrid reality. So we've got a lot of work to do when we return to classrooms. One of the things that we first need to recognize is eliminating the tension between the dynamics between remote and classroom experience. Instead, we need to embrace a dynamic where everything understands digital reality, but we embrace and value the importance of our classroom connections. And this is something that we've got to bring to everything from how do we optimize our physical space in schools and campus with technology and digital tools, to how we embrace and be thoughtful about the remote learning environment. Now, as we think about this, it really comes together in powerful ways, and we know that we can deliver transformation. We see the shift of learning really moving from standardized to far more personalized, unbundling learning opportunities for all students around the world, and creating a foundation for a real shift in the ways in which we're preparing learners, leveraging our materials, and frankly, elevating the role of educators to be far more connected to the impact that he or she can make on individual students using a wide variety of tools and resources versus the traditional lecture content assessment rhythm that we've had in the education paradigm for over a century. And this is exciting to deal with, and we certainly see teachers recognizing that this is going to be part of the norm. In research, we certainly see that educators are looking for the implications of personalization and how we can drive more time to provide insight with data to help learners be at their best. We see this example coming through all of the work that we hear from educators who want to do a better job of getting better insight on student progress. Especially in a digital world, how do we get a sense of student engagement? Are they really active and engaged? Do we have a sense if they're even immersed in the learning in classrooms? Do we have better tools to identify how students can leverage their aspirations for career or the skills that they need to develop and enhance that journey with guidance and impact proactively? These are areas that educators have long sought for, and increasingly we have the technology foundation to make that real. We know school leaders are trying to fundamentally change a world that has become far more complex, not only optimizing with safety and security, efficiency, the ways in which we use our physical spaces, but increasingly, how do we bring inclusion across parents and students for experiences far beyond the school and classroom? How do we create a connected experience of all the back-end tools, the legacy systems, the content and curriculum in ways where it not only is easy for educators and teachers to thrive, but it makes it a powerful tool to accelerate student outcomes? These are the dynamics that we're facing globally, and certainly there's a lot of opportunity for us to transform. This is one of the reasons why meetings like this are certainly important, so we can share best practices from other educators around the world, highlight some themes that we need to work on collectively as we move forward. Now, certainly, the last piece that we certainly hear from, and this is an important part, is students. Increasingly, we're seeing the opportunity for students who naturally use technology anyway in their daily lives. They have an affection and affinity to technology to connect and collaborate. And this was happening beyond school notice before COVID, where students would work on digital platforms to collaborate and connect, often without real visibility for teachers or systems. We now have an opportunity to blend it far more naturally, and I think we can accelerate students' learning. But as we recognize the dynamic students are facing, increasingly are feeling pressure on a world that's changing, and certainly the changing jobs that require new skills are creating pressure on students, and students are living through incredibly uncertain times. So we've got to do what we can to elevate and support students as we help them learn and be at their best. Now, we think about these changes. The good news, and frankly, the thing that we need to recognize, is that the world of technology is fundamentally supporting a lot of the aspirations to reimagine education, but they're also creating an imperative to reimagine education, because the technologies you see here are accelerating the world of work, the global economy. Tools like the cloud have enabled a response to COVID-19, but they're also creating an acceleration of digitization across every industry, including education. How are we using big data and AI to provide insight? How are we immersing mixed reality for more engagement in classrooms? Leveraging the oncoming opportunities with blockchain to provide much more sequenced understanding of curriculum content and assessment in far more dynamic ways than we're doing today. And then obviously quantum computing, which will fundamentally reshape the technology landscape that you see across the world, create an opportunity for us to re-envision problems that we thought long impossible to solve. And obviously that's going to start with getting students on board and ready to embrace this quantum future. These are huge changes, and certainly I think that it reflects on the changes that we're seeing in the industry. One of the things I like to recognize, though, is the ways in which I work today, connecting and collaborating with my peers and my team to get projects done, to share ideas and thinking, and the way in which most of the world is working today has more closely resembled the dynamics of learning and education than ever before in human history. And this is a tremendous advantage for students to build the skills that they're going to need as they approach the future. And certainly this is part of the work that Microsoft is doing to help students build the skills, both technology skills, skills like perseverance and resilience, to drive their thinking around not only their career aspiration, but the work that they do with their peers. Everything from tools like Flipgrid to help them share their voice and agency with each other, to tools like Minecraft to help them reimagine what's possible and use technology in a way to create, share, and explore, to tools that will enable them to build the foundation for the future, whether it's office productivity, tools like Azure to use data and AI to create the world of work, and then leveraging tools like LinkedIn to get connected to careers going forward. These are part of the offerings Microsoft is working with schools and universities to help students progress. We're also recognize the importance of the educators along this journey. How do we help teachers not only get the skills that they need to thrive in this new world, but to celebrate the amazing, awesome teachers that we have around the world? And I have to recognize all of the amazing teachers that we have in Slovakia from a Microsoft innovative educator standpoint. They are truly amazing, doing innovative things every day. And we got to continue to remember to celebrate. I'm hopeful when we put the pandemic behind us and we celebrate the work that our first responders have done, there's a float and a parade for teachers to thank them for the amazing work that they've done over the last year. It has truly been incredible, and we're supporting them in our community and resources that we provide teachers. And then lastly, I want to just highlight for school leaders, our education transformation framework provides a foundational roadmap to think through everything I've just shared in context holistically. It's important as we move forward to think about the elements of change in connection to one another. No longer can we have binary decisions and planning for individual items. We need to think about each area connectedly, both to share data and insight and also to create flexible and efficient systems. We've seen this used all around the world for great effect to drive a holistic approach to change. And certainly this is an area that we can certainly help all of our school leaders with. We've seen many best practices where using the education transformation framework has provided a guide tool to provide a flexible and adaptable way to think through the opportunities that schools have, to put people first as part of the planning, and to understand the implications of change across many different dimensions. And certainly as we work with school leaders around the world, we want to share the knowledge and best practice to accelerate the change that you see. I hope you enjoy the rest of this event. Understand that the most important thing as we work through these challenging times is to bring hope forward, to work with purpose and certainly with urgency, but to recognize that celebrating our teachers and recognizing the importance of preparing students for the future is at the core of what we must do. I'm looking forward to helping accelerate your future journey ahead, and thank you so much for participating in this event, and certainly look forward to continued success going forward. Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure to join you virtually.